Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. And I wanted to share something with you, which is only going to be for you, people sitting here, who are paying me any attention, which is fine. If you're not, it's absolutely fine. You can do what you like. For those paying attention, I am going to be role-playing a doctor from the NHS. But the people walking past, who are not privy to this particular comment, won't know that I am doing a role play. Now, this is meant to be provocative, interactive theatre, so I'd like to just encourage each one of you to respond in any way you feel like it. If you're feeling angry, frightened, whatever it is, offended, please express yourself fully, but only in words. You can use whatever words you like. I'm just acting, so I don't care if you make fun of my character, I'm just acting. So don't take it personally. So feel free to join in as much as you like. Here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, after a long day at UCH Hospital, as a consultant psychiatrist, I prescribe a lot of drugs. Would you like some drugs, sir? What drugs would you like? What drugs would you like? Cocaine and heroin. Really? Have you had cocaine and heroin before? You've had cocaine before, but you haven't had heroin, right? Heroin kills, yes, it's a bit dangerous, but cocaine you'd like. You like some cocaine? Why would you like cocaine? Can I ask you? Party drug. You like a bit of a party? Yes. Well, I'm afraid at the NHS we don't have access to cocaine, but I'll tell you who does have access to a lot of cocaine. We do have morphine, but I'll tell you who does have access to cocaine, to a form of cocaine, and that is your dentist. Your dentist uses cocaine in his anaesthetic, so probably better to ask your dentist if you want some cocaine. Again, morphine is more like the heroin, isn't it? I can probably get you some of that for the right money. Anyway, so I've had a very long day at the NHS. I've been prescribing all sorts of drugs to my patients in the psychiatric area. Some of my patients, of course, are locked up, and some of them are, could be even here in the crowd. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to therefore talk to you about drugs today and the dangers of drugs, the relative dangers of drugs. And unfortunately, our society has got it all completely mixed up. Because one of the most dangerous drugs, I would say probably in my experience, the most dangerous drug out there is actually alcohol. Alcohol is a terribly, terribly dangerous drug. So dangerous, ladies and gentlemen. Only because it's legal? Alright, does that make it? If it was illegal, it would even out? Yeah, it might do, but I mean, it doesn't matter. It is legal. The fact is, whether it's legal or illegal, it's still a terrible drug compared to a lot of the other drugs. It's a very dangerous drug, and the problem is that it is actually a gateway drug. It's a gateway drug, ladies and gentlemen, to the most dangerous drug on the planet. Now, you may not know what the most dangerous drug on the planet was, but I'd like to ask you, what do you think, can you name some of the most dangerous drugs that kill people? Heroin? Anything else? Weed? I don't think weed ever killed anybody, I say, and that's what it says on the internet though, so it must be true. Because Abraham Lincoln said, always believe everything you see on the internet, didn't he? So come on, let's do better than weed. Weed doesn't kill people. Go on, what other drugs kill people? Morphine, heroin, love? Oh, we're going to get to that in a minute. Very good. You're close, but very good with love. We'll come back to love in a minute. What other drugs kill people, sir? What's that?
Love.
Love
is more addictive.
Love is more addictive. You're right. I think we're getting a bit mixed up here between love and sex, aren't we? I think it's the sex, ladies and gentlemen. It's the sex. Or maybe it's the love. Ladies and gentlemen, that's true. The most dangerous drug after heroin is probably alcohol, because alcohol is a gateway drug that leads to all the other drugs and to the most dangerous drug, which is either love or sex, depending on how you look at it. Of course, the drug of love, which is really truly a drug which affects your body and your mind in a very, very powerful way. It makes you think in a very strange way. Love is a very, very dangerous drug which leads to the most dangerous drug of all, which is the drugs released during climax. These are the most dangerous drugs released during climax because they lead to reproduction. Taking these drugs leads to the creation of a whole human being, the whole of their life, created by a little buzz for about 5 or 10 seconds for a man, and maybe up to 25 seconds for a woman. These are the most dangerous, lethal drugs, ladies and gentlemen, and they are created by your own body and can lead to the most tragic experiments, many of whom we are seeing here. All of these people are basically sexual experiments. This is what happens, often fueled by the drug alcohol, which leads to the drug of sex, which leads to these experiments, ladies and gentlemen, all of them completely unnecessary. We must therefore start to tell the truth about drugs. I work in the NHS as a psychiatrist, and I prescribe a lot of drugs. What's that? Think I need some? We all need drugs, don't we? I mean, everybody's taking drugs these days. It's like this chap here, for example. You taking drugs? Do you take any drugs? Do you take any drugs? No drugs at all? No? You don't do any caffeine? Sugar? No sugar at all? Really? Only what's in processed foods? Oh. I'm not really sure that that's not taking any sugar. No, that's probably taking quite a lot of sugar, because sugar's in almost all processed foods these days. So you do take drugs, don't you? Yeah, okay. Well done for admitting it. Ladies and gentlemen, sex creates a release of the most dangerous drugs on the planet. Much more dangerous even than alcohol. If you think about it, sex is much worse than drunk driving. Drunk driving does not necessarily have to lead to the death of somebody, or even somebody's harm, or even it can lead to just sort of crashing into a tree, for example. Whereas sex can lead to the creation of a human being who will definitely die, probably suffer, and probably die in a very nasty way. It is the most dangerous drug, and people are taking it tonight, and there will be 2,000 new people created in the next 24 hours, which is a terrible tragedy. A scam, ladies and gentlemen. The oldest scam in the book, sex. Coronavirus? You think coronavirus is the oldest scam in the world? No, it's not. It's a very new scam. If it's a scam, it's a very new one. But sex is the oldest scam in the book, by definition. I tell you, as a psychiatrist, I see people every day who struggle with all sorts of problems. I see people every single day who I have to offer all sorts of drugs to. Antidepressants, antipsychotic, anti-anxiety, and that's just the drugs that I have to take to be able to see these people on a regular basis. It's very hard. I thought it was funny, but that's fine. Obviously you don't have access to the same number of drugs I've got access to, do you? Shame that. I, ladies and gentlemen, have spent the whole day in psychiatric consultations with various people. I spent the morning at a mental health facility and the afternoon seeing patients. And I can tell you, all of these patients that I've seen, all of their problems can be traced back to sex. What's that? All of their problems can be traced back to sex. All of the people that I see with all those mental health problems, all of their problems can be traced back to sex. Did you realize that? No, you don't realize that? Well, let me explain. If their parents would have realized that sex is just a scam, it's just a drug in your head. When you have it, you're basically on drugs. You're no better than a heroin addict. In fact, you'd be better off being a heroin addict than a sex addict, because at least taking heroin doesn't create more human life, whereas sex does. And what sex does is release drugs in your body, just like you're a junkie. Yeah, it releases drugs in your body, which makes you think in a weird, stupid way, and takes your mind off what you're doing, which is possibly creating a kind of half-baked experiment, right, with the person that you're with, kind of mixing your DNA in a slightly Dr. Frankensteinish type of way, yeah, hoping for the best, but in the end, look at these experiments here, ladies and gentlemen. All of these are sexual experiments. Chemical, medical, sexual experiments. And it's, unfortunately, you can see many of them don't seem to be going very well. Look at this experiment here. Is that a bit too much? Yeah, but no, I tell you, part of the whole thing is you just say, look at them here, but you don't actually point at anybody, you just see who takes the bait. You see what I'm saying? I wasn't actually saying it towards anybody. Ladies and gentlemen, we have to stop experimenting on children. And what's worse about sex is that basically it's not just an experiment on babies, it's not just an experiment on toddlers, not just an experiment on young people, it's not just an experiment on teenagers. It can be an experiment on 20 and 30-year-olds, on vulnerable people. It can be an experiment on people who struggle with obesity. It can be an experiment on people with other mental health conditions. It can be an experiment on dementia. It can be an experiment with cancer. And why are people experimenting with each other? Why? Because they want to? Yes, I agree. Because they want to. Which means that they're just behaving like all the other animals on the planet. Because that's what the animals do. Exactly.
Talking, we are part of the nature.
What's that?
We are part of the nature.
You are part of the nature? What's part of the nature?
Yeah, we have to agree on one side.
We are part of nature.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sex between people, yeah, is part of the mankind evolution of the life.
Sex with the people is part of the mankind's evolution of life. Is it? Really? What's so good about mankind's evolution of life? Look where it's got us. It's not going anywhere, is it? I mean, can anybody tell me where is the evolution of life actually going? Madam, can you tell us where's the evolution of life going? 2 stops down the road. Sunderland, is it going to Sunderland? Because it doesn't look like it's going anywhere other than down south, doesn't it? It looks like the evolution of life is devolving, isn't it, really? I don't know, look at all the people with masks. It doesn't look very evolved to me.
Shows what a pair of tits look like, you virgin cunt.
What was that?
Show us what a pair of tits like, you virgin cunt.
Show me what a pair of tits like, you virgin C-word. Okay. Alright. You've been taking drugs, haven't you? We've been thinking about drugs earlier again.
I've took some fantastic drugs.
You've taken some fantastic drugs? Really? Well, this is what you're like when you take fantastic drugs. Obviously not that fantastic, are they? Look at you. You give a bad light and a bad example to people about taking drugs. What was that?
You look upset.
Well, no, I'm not upset, but I'm a drug dealer myself. I work for the NHS. I'm a psychiatrist, yes. I help people like you. Look at you with your Stella Artois drugs on your shoulder. You see, that's a very dangerous drug you've got there. Shall I tell you why? Because it probably could lead to someone sleeping with you if you give them enough of it.
Good lad, mate. That was alright, that. You did
Yes.
alright there.
If you give them enough of it. Did you catch that one, yeah?
That was
You'll
alright.
probably need a couple more boxes to get someone to sleep with you. But the thing is, that what worries me about that is that is a did you realise that is a gateway drug to a much more dangerous drug?
It's an hard life being a fucking gimp, lad, isn't it?
It's a hard life being an fucking gimp. Is it? Really? I don't know. Obviously you know.
Mate, he's upset.
I got no idea how to go hard around the world and to be straight still.
What's that? I don't have any idea what.
Walking around the world and to be still straight and still keep going on. So
I don't really understand what you're saying. Look.
Well, he's having you off now, you sad twat.
What's that?
He's having you off now.
He's having me off, you sad too.
You're alright. You're a big boy.
Don't forget to pick up your Pringles.
It's alright, I don't give a shit, it's fine. Thank you.
Very good for you. So you're already taking care of your health there, so you know. What with the cigarettes, Pringles and Stella Artois.
The Pringles are mine. They're mine.
See, the thing is, what worries me about that is not that you're going to have those tonight, right? But that there's a possibility that you could have sex tonight, yeah? Which is a much more dangerous drug. Which is a much more dangerous drug, because the idea of you reproducing makes me feel very, very nervous. Because imagine what it would be like to have you as a dad. What's that?
You're a fucking good looking lad for a wanker.
I'm a good-looking lad for a W word. Right.
I'd spunk between your cheeks for a laugh, mate.
I can't repeat that.
How are you, my friend?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
You'll get bored before me, you daft cunt.
I'll get bored, what?
Before me, you daft cunt.
Before you daft C word. Really? What is it? I mean, have you ever seen a vagina that's intelligent? Or are they all daft?
I'm not sure what that means, but yeah.
You're not sure what that means? Yeah, right. You're telling me you've been taking some really good drugs.
Should we both take our tops off and heat it?
Should we both take our tops off? No, I'd rather you didn't take your top off, to be honest. Just keep it on.
You're a hot
I will
looking
after
bloke,
it.
mate.
I'm a hot-looking guy.
I'd knock you off until
You'd knock me off?
Sore, lad.
Till I
I'd
got sore.
fucking do you for a
Would you?
fucking pound, mate.
I must say that's the best compliment I've had today, and for a long time actually. My wife doesn't even treat me like that these days. Mind you, we have been married quite a long time, so I'm quite surprised.
If alcohol is a gateway to other drugs,
If an alcohol is gateway, thank you very much for joining the show,
Not a problem,
and have a
mate.
safe trip home.
Go and do some more of them good drugs, mate.
You're going to go do some of those good
See
drugs.
better tits. Look for the rest of us.
All right, thanks.
if alcohol is a gateway to other drugs, why is it legal?
If alcohol is a gateway to other drugs, why is it legal? Very good question. You tell me. Go on, why is it legal?
Well, you're the one saying that we shouldn't drink alcohol.
I'm not the one that's saying you shouldn't do anything. He says I'm the one who's saying you shouldn't drink alcohol. No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that it leads to other much more dangerous drugs, and one of the worst drugs it leads to is sex. Yeah, a lot of people have sex when they're drunk. Like a lot of people are here because their parents had sex when they were drunk. You know what I mean? which is like, you know, when you think about it, it's reckless,
So your-
it's irresponsible.
From your professional opinion,
From my professional opinion, yeah.
why is it legal? Knowing
Why is it legal?
despite
Well,
the
I'm not a professional lawyer. I'm a professional doctor. So I don't know why it's legal. I mean, I think you could always be conspiratorial about it and say the reason why it's legal is because a lot of people are making a lot of money out of it, and also out of it, you know. So if you think about it, you've got all the alcohol companies. You've got the hospitals, they make quite a lot of money out of it. You've got the police, they make quite a lot of money. Or the whole legal system makes quite a lot of money out of it. So a lot of services make money out of the legality of alcohol, but they also make a lot of money out of the illegality of some of the other drugs, which are actually a lot better than alcohol, or a lot less problematic than alcohol. Yes.
So we can come to a conclusion that money is the biggest scam and not sex.
So we can come to the conclusion that money is the biggest scam and not sex. No. You are right. Money comes in at number 2. But sex is by far the worst one. Because without sex, without your parents having sex, you wouldn't have a problem with money. Exactly. You wouldn't have a problem with money. You wouldn't have a problem with anything at all. And therefore, we can trace all of your problems back to sex. And sex is a scam. Sex is basically releases drugs into your body, and we need to call sex what it is. Basically, people who have sex regularly are just junkies. They're the worst junkies of all. Because at least heroin doesn't lead to creating more children, yeah? But sex does. And therefore, people who have sex do it because it releases drugs into their mind. What difference does it make if it's created by rubbing together or it's created by, you know, injection, whatever it is? So the fact is that when you have sex, you're taking drugs, and if you do it regularly, you're a junkie.
What's your ultimate purpose for this? Population control?
What was that?
So does eating. So what?
So does eating what?
Releases dopamine in your
I know eating releases dopamine, but the thing is that actually, it's a good point actually. The problem is not with eating. The problem is, firstly, the side effects of eating, right? Or the unwanted effects of eating. Yes? So there are some unwanted effects of eating. For example, getting diabetes might be an unwanted effect of eating, or getting obese might be an unwanted effect of eating. See what I'm saying? So obviously, I've never had a good shag. Really? Why? Why do you think that?
Well, I don't know, because you're so like anti-sex.
I'm not anti-sex. No, you don't understand it. I'm not anti-sex. No, not at all. Yeah? I'm just telling you that sex is basically taking a drug. Yeah? Well, you say it's not. I know you probably don't want to think yourself as a junkie, right? You probably don't want to, but it releases some very powerful drugs into your body, which basically makes you become unconscious of what you're really doing, which is creating more human life.
But like, you're not going to overdose on sex, right?
You're not going to overdose on sex. You absolutely are going to overdose on sex. Absolutely, you are. No, you're not going to die. You're not likely to die from having sex, although it's quite a nice way to go, I think, isn't it? You're going to go anyway. That'd probably be quite a good way. But you're not going to die. But what you're going to do is you're going to cause someone else to die. Having sex causes other people to die. Did you not realise?
Hold on.
What's that?
This is the
Not in your experience?
Have you killed someone during sex?
No. It wasn't someone. No, it wasn't that I killed someone during sex, right? No. I didn't mean that. Although that does happen. That does happen occasionally. But no. I'm not talking about kill someone during sex. I'm sort of saying that sex leads to death. It leads to the death of someone that you create. If you create a human being, they will die. And therefore, the sex has led to death. See what I'm saying? So the drug experience of sex leads to death.
how could
I'm getting all philosophical. So what? I'm a psychiatrist, so I get philosophical. It's part of my work. Yes.
hold on. How could a sex and building a new generation lead to that?
How can having sex, building a new generation, lead to death? Yes, it will lead to death of the generation. All of them are going to die. So if you create, anyway, we're not talking about generation, we're talking about just you. I'm just suggesting that you should be very, very careful and make sure that you don't create another human being. That's what, just talking about you and everybody else. Just here, just the people here we're talking about.
Huh? I know, it's not my favourite thing.
Can I not accept that it's natural to procreate? Okay, that by the way is what's called an appeal to nature, right? That's a logical fallacy, yeah? It's a logical fallacy to say that, oh, because it's natural. Yes, it's also natural to do all sorts of abhorrent things for humans. It's very natural for them to do all sorts of things, but because we're human, what we do is we have what's called a conscience. I mean, not everybody's got one, I understand, you know, some people are born without one, but...
Why don't you like sex?
What's that?
Why don't you like sex?
It's not I don't like sex, it's just, you know, not with you anyway.
No one wants to have sex with you.
Sex is
What's
basic
that,
of
nobody would have
nature.
sex with me?
Hold on,
You think
hold on.
nobody would have...
Hold on, sex is basic of nature.
Sex is basic of nature.
Reproduction.
Reproduction.
Basic of the nature.
It's basic of the nature.
I think you'd be nice to have sex with.
You think I'd be nice to have sex with?
Basically,
You're the second one so far. It's a shame I'm heterosexual, isn't it, really? We've had a lovely night this evening.
Would you have sex with me?
No. Sorry.
Oh, no.
But if I did, at least the good news is that at least I'd know that you wouldn't be procreating and neither would I. So that's got to be good, hasn't it?
What's the problem with dying?
What's the problem with dying?
Listen to
That's
me.
a good point. That's a good question. Well, yeah, you're right. Yeah, there is no problem with dying at all. In fact, the problem is not with dying. The problem is being born. That's the problem. See what I'm saying?
It's a
So
problem
the actual
that
death,
you're born.
the death, your death is not the problem. It's the end of all your problems. But it's the birth that's the problem. Yeah. That's what we shouldn't be crying. We shouldn't cry when they die. We should mourn when they're born. What's the problem with living? Well, just look around you. Look at all these people here.
You're obsessed with the daughter.
What's that? If I'm so what?
If you hate living so much,
If I hate living so much, why don't I jump off a bridge? That's a good idea. Actually, I've never really thought of that. I mean, the thing is that jumping off a bridge, do you recommend that as a way of... I presume you think I should kill myself, right?
I didn't say that. I said
You did say that. You think I should jump off a bridge then? For what reason would I jump off a bridge if I was not to kill myself?
because you don't like living.
Yes, but you just said jump off a bridge but not to kill myself. I mean,
She said if you hate living, why are you still here?
who said I hate living?
You're talking. You said.
No, I just said that creating life is a problem because you are creating a whole lot of needs and problems for no good reason because of taking the most dangerous lethal drug, sex. And what I'm saying is sex leads to death, right? Because it leads to the creation of life, which is basically the onset of death. Now, what life is the onset of death. The minute you're born, that's when you start to die. Yes?
What's so great about non-existing?
What's so great about non-existence? That's a good question. I think what's so great about it is that it's like infinitely peaceful forevermore. You'll have no needs, no problems. You wouldn't be bothered by some bloke on a megaphone. You wouldn't have to pay £250 to go first class to Sunderland when you should really go free. Don't be Sunderland, it's really crap. Right? So you wouldn't have any problems at all. You wouldn't have COVID. You wouldn't have to do what the government tells you to do. You wouldn't have to wear any masks. You wouldn't have to get an iPhone. And you wouldn't need to do anything at all, right? So it's wonderful. Non-existence is wonderful. It's very peaceful.
The only way you can find
Problem with having problems.
I am stupid as a fuck.
Okay, thank you for that.
if you want to
I did notice, actually, to be honest. No, I'm just kidding.
if you want to find the
What's the
actual
problem
answer,
with
you have to
problems?
answer
Okay, hold on. I'm just going to answer his question, so fair enough. Okay, so what's the problem with problems?
the questions he's asking.
Well,
saying,
that's a good question. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to demonstrate a technique that I use when people ask me questions that I haven't thought about before, or even if I have thought about them before, I want to think about them again. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to think about your question for about 30 seconds or so, maybe a little more.
According to what you've been saying,
One second, I'm thinking about this question.
You need heroin.
you need to understand what is the purpose of life. Therefore, you will understand why we are born, why we die.
Mate,
Think about
you have to study
Take care.
Yeah, and you.
the history of humanity as history of nature. Yeah? And turn that off. You're speaking stupid things, man.
I'm speaking stupid things, I should turn it off? Yes?
Turn it off.
Is that what you think? Anybody else? Who said yes there? Yes, you do. Really? Do you always go around telling other people what they should do? I mean, seriously, what's going on here?
Seriously, you're talking
When I'm speaking
about
BS like
nature,
this,
nature of life.
yeah,
What I'm saying is harmful and stupid.
it's harmful and stupid.
Exactly.
I'm trying to help you. Yes, by making sure that you do not become a junkie, a sex junkie, which could lead to reproduction.
Wait. You cut them. Hold on, mate.
Turn the effing megaphone off and check myself into a mental hospital. I was just in a mental hospital. I'm a psychiatrist.
Was a
And I'm sure I'm not the patient. You're not the first patient that said that to me, I have to be honest with you. And I'm sure you won't be the last. Anyway, so what I've been saying is, ladies and gentlemen, that the drug that this guy's on at the moment, alcohol, is a very dangerous drug because it's a gateway drug to the most dangerous drug, which are, well, set of drugs, which are the drugs that are released, oxytocin, what's that?
You didn't answer my question.
Oh yes, what's the problem with problems? Well, you see, the problem with problems is, I mean, the problem with my problems are, you know, I can overcome my problems because they are pretty mild compared to other people's problems. That's number one. Number two, I mean, I don't have necessarily so many problems with my problems, although there are some problems which I have, and some problems which I'm going to have, which I would rather not have, like, for example, getting old and falling to pieces, right? So, but the problem I have is creating somebody else's problems. What right does someone have to create someone else's problems? That's a problem, you see, because you might know, even though you may realize, you may come to an understanding or realization or an ability to realize that your problems can be used to, you know, to forward your life and to, you know, help you, because that's how humans work and everything. You can overcome those problems, yeah? But you can't, but that's different. Because you can't guarantee. No, hold on. I'm trying to answer.
Hold on.
Why did you knock my phone out my hand?
I've been through so
You don't have
many
to do that,
things,
man.
so many pure torture and so many stuff.
Yeah. What I'm saying is fake. Okay?
One side is
I think that on one side it's true,
I've smashed my phone to do it.
but you've been in lots of situations. I'm just repeating what you're saying. Yeah, but the thing is, you have been drinking a lot of alcohol, haven't you? And I'm a psychiatrist and I deal with a lot of people who drink alcohol, and it's a very, very dangerous drug. And I would really deal with it if I were you. Have you been going to any programs? Have you been going to Alcoholics Anonymous, for example? You don't need to. That's what a lot of alcoholics say. You do need to. You really do. Please go get yourself into Alcoholics Anonymous. Anyway, so what I was trying to say before I was interrupted, but it's fine, I'm happy for you to interrupt me, is that the drugs released during sex are the most dangerous drugs by far. And you know, if you think about it, how expensive a sexual experience is, the drugs of sex are. If you think about it, imagine somebody offering you a 30-second, for women, by the way, it's about 30 seconds, that last little bit, but for women it's irrelevant because that's not what really creates it's the man, really. Think about it, it's the man, yeah, the release of drugs in the man's mind. That takes about 10 seconds, maybe, you know, so like 10, 20 seconds, the actual climax, yeah? So that drug taking can cost the man £500,000. Well, it costs, in my opinion, you should have millions of pounds if you're going to bring a child into existence. especially in this crazy world we're living in, right?
What
So,
about condoms?
what about condoms?
Yeah.
What about condoms?
You can just use them.
You can just use condoms?
Yes.
Yes, you can just use condoms. I agree with you, you can use condoms. The problem is that a lot of people, a lot of young people, don't use them. They literally, there are just, I mean, this is absolutely tragic that we're not teaching young people that sex is a scam. We're not telling them. Yes. Would I rather you take heroin than have sex? Yes, absolutely. If it was unprotected, I would rather you take heroin than have unprotected sex. 100%, of course. Because just think about it. If you have heroin, that's only you that you're damaging, yeah? But if you have unprotected sex, you're creating a whole other human being for no good reason. Just because you want to have a nice little drug experience. Because that's what sex is. It's just another drug experience. What's the difference between sex and heroin? Taking heroin, what's the difference?
Sex is a spiritual you accept somebody into yourself.
It's a spiritual thing, is it? Is it?
This is Mean Girls.
What's
Man
that?
said if we have sex, we die.
What's that?
You're on crack.
I'm on crack?
Yeah, my guy. Yeah.
I'm just telling you that I've actually spent the whole day working as a psychiatrist in the NHS. Yeah, and I'm here free of charge, just offering my advice about drug taking. And what I'm saying is that sex is basically the sexual experience, is basically, from a scientific point of view, it is the release of drugs into the body. It's just a drug taking experience.
Right. You're saying you'd rather me take heroin than to have unprotected sex?
I'd rather you take heroin than have unprotected sex.
Heroin
Yes, I
kills
would.
you. Just
From a medical point of view, if you think about it, if you take heroin, then you could be doing some damage to yourself. You're very likely to be doing. Not necessarily. There are some people that take heroin sometimes. Apparently, I don't know. Not that many, but if you take heroin, yeah, that's only damaging yourself. If you have unprotected sex, then you could be creating a whole new set of problems, a whole new set of harms, and a whole new potential, well, not potential, a whole new death, another death. Yes, that's right. Well, you're saying what's the problem, but it's okay to do that. If you think it's not a problem, that's fine, but you have no way to guarantee that the person you're creating doesn't have a problem with their own death, because many people are really scared about their own death. Look at now, look at today, everybody's worried, oh, people dying, people dying. So, yeah, people do die every day, that's right. But, and also, you know, your child could have serious, your child could end up having to come to someone like me, a psychiatrist. Yeah? You would? You do? Yeah. Okay, that's fair enough. Well, the problem could be, for example, I was speaking to someone just a couple of days ago that is in such terrible agony, has headaches, right? Terrible headaches and stomach aches almost every day, that they can't stand living anymore and they want to end it all. Yeah? Why would you want to create that? Just so that you can have a nice little fuzzy feeling, which is basically a drug hit. That's all it is. It's just like having heroin. I don't know how long heroin lasts for. How long does heroin last for?
You're asking me.
Sorry, not you. Just,
I'm asking you a question. Can I have a question?
am I allowed to talk about my patients? Is it legal? Of course it's legal for me to talk about my patients. As long as I don't tell you what their names are and their addresses are, I can talk in general about my patients. And a lot of them have got...
Have you got a significant other?
Have I got a significant
Yes,
other?
my darling. Yeah.
I've never been asked if I got a significant other
Have you
before.
got a wife, a girl, a
wife,
boyfriend,
a girl.
a husband? What?
Why are you asking?
Because
Before I tell you.
you're saying sex is equivalent to
Taking heroin, yeah, I'm saying sex is equivalent. Yes, I do. I have a wife.
Uh-huh. And sorry to be personal.
Sorry to be personal, go on, be personal, I don't mind. Then you can ask me any questions you like. I reserve the right to answer them anywhere I wish, but you can ask me any questions, yeah.
So, within your marriage.
Within my marriage, yes.
Yeah. You have kids, yeah?
Do I have kids?
Yeah.
I was hoping you weren't going to ask about that.
You do have kids,
Yes,
right?
I do, yes.
Right, well then you can't be standing here.
I can't be standing here. I can't be standing here telling everyone
You
what.
can't tell everyone to not have unprotected sex. It makes
I can't tell everyone not to have unprotected sex. No, I'm not really. Let me get this straight. I'm not telling you what to do, you understand that? I'm not really telling you what to do because there's no point in telling you what to do. It's not like you're not going to do it, is it? It's not like anybody's going to go home tonight and say, right, that's it. there was this guy in a megaphone, with a megaphone, who said he was a psychiatrist, but we doubt it. And he told us not to have unprotected sex, but rather have heroin. I can't imagine anybody going now, all right, that's it. They're going to have some really nice sex tonight with their partner, but they said, no, they said, darling, I'm not going to have sex tonight. This guy told me I should rather have heroin, so I've decided to just go store some heroin in Camden Town. I did think that's very likely to happen. You understand? I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just pointing out that I think that having sex, which is basically releasing a drug, just having a drug experience just like having heroin, yeah? I think that having sex is much more dangerous because it affects other people, whereas having heroin is much less dangerous because it doesn't affect other people, it affects yourself. And as far as I'm concerned, you know, what you do to yourself and with yourself is your business. You're the moment you're smoking nicotine. That's pretty bad for you, right? Yeah, okay. I know you don't care, and neither do I, right? That's up to you, yeah? But it would be much worse if you had unprotected sex. If you were having unprotected sex right now, then it would be a much worse drug that you were taking. And unfortunately, alcohol is a gateway drug for sex. And so basically, it's a gateway drug for oxytocin. That's what it is. Yes.
So you think we should go extinct, or what?
Do I think we should go extinct?
Yeah, so like,
Well, I mean,
we get rid of suffering.
do I think we should go extinct and get rid of suffering? Well, the thing is that what I think about what we should or shouldn't do is ridiculous. I mean, that's just like, you know, that's just a fantasy. Like, we are going to go extinct one day, aren't we? We're not going to be here forever. We're not going to be here for another 500 trillion years, yeah? We're going to go extinct, that's number one. Number two, all of us here are going to die, right? So, you know, when you say we go extinct, you know, what?
Human beings.
Yeah, but, I mean, so what if human beings do go extinct or don't go extinct or when they go extinct, whatever? It's nothing to do with me. I can't stop, you know, I can't stop the human race from carrying on, can I? All I'm doing here as a psychiatrist is I'm speaking about drugs, and I have a lot of experience in drugs, and what I'm saying is that heroin is a far less destructive drug than oxytocin. Oxytocin is much more dangerous than heroin. Oxytocin is released when you have sex. Therefore, in my opinion, having unprotected heterosexual sex is far more problematic and dangerous than taking heroin.
But that's a philosophical opinion, not a medical one, right?
It's a philosophical opinion, not a medical one.
Yeah.
What's that? Do I tell my kids to take heroin? No, because I don't want them to take heroin. I'm not saying, I'm not saying that you should take heroin. I'm saying if there's a choice between unprotected sex and heroin, I would always say take the heroin. Well, no, I don't say my kids take heroin because my kids don't have unprotected sex. That's the point. Well, I don't. But if they were to ask me, Dad, should we have unprotected sex or take heroin, I'd say definitely take the heroin. Yeah. Do you think is that wrong? Really? Really, is that very bad? Do you think I should persuade them not to take the heroin and go for the unprotected sex? Am I crazy? Yes. What's that? Can you translate that into English? You're Polish? Yes. Right. I presume that means that you think I'm crazy, but it doesn't sound like you speak English, so how do you know? No, it doesn't matter if he can't speak English or not, but he has said that I'm crazy, and for that, it does matter. It does matter for him to be able to decipher whether I'm crazy or not. He needs to be able to speak English. I don't, you know, the fact that he can't speak English, I mean, I can't speak Polish. It doesn't make any difference. I'm not saying it makes any difference what language you speak, but obviously, if he's going to be accusing me of being crazy, he's got to be able to have some basic understanding of English, enough to be able to say you're crazy, right? You not agree? I mean, I don't mind if you think I'm crazy. It really doesn't bother me. I mean, a lot of people, I work as a psychiatrist, and a lot of my patients think I'm the one that's crazy, but, you know, what do you expect?
Just because he doesn't speak English doesn't mean he's less bright.
Just because he doesn't speak English doesn't mean he's less bright. No, I didn't say it means he's less bright, but it does mean that he has less of an ability to be able to decide whether someone is crazy or not, because he doesn't know what I'm saying. So how does he know I'm crazy? He can't even speak English.
If he understands you, he just doesn't know how to express
Oh, he understands me, but he just doesn't know how to express himself. Really? So you think he understands what I'm saying, but he can't even say the words, you're crazy, because he doesn't know how to say them. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, fair enough.
I can understand Portuguese and I can't
You,
speak it.
you can understand Portuguese, but you can't speak it.
In Italian, in Catalan,
You
I
can't
can
speak
speak.
any Portuguese at all, but you can understand the language. You can understand the nuances, you can understand the jokes, you can understand it all, but you can't say, you can't say the words in Portuguese, I think you're crazy. Is that right? How on earth can you understand all the nuances of the language, and yet you not able to articulate the words, I think you're crazy, but you go, you know what I mean? It's ridiculous.
I get the gist of it.
You get the gist of it?
Yeah.
Right. So you think he's got the gist of what I'm saying here?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah.
Alright, okay, fair enough. Well, you know, maybe you should have a chat with him then, because maybe he can find out what is the gist of what I'm saying.
It doesn't have to.
What's that?
I don't know.
You don't know?
I mean,
So you don't even know what the gist of what I'm saying is. Why do you think he knows what the gist of what I'm saying is? What is my thesis?
In one sentence, what is your thesis?
In one sentence.
Yeah, why are you here? What's the point? What are we supposed to take away from this?
What are we supposed to take away from this? Okay, that's a good question. Let me have a little think about that, because it's difficult for me to just put it in one sentence. Yeah, I'll have a little think about that.
Okay.
I'm not quite sure that I can sum it up in one sentence, but I mean I think that I've kind of hinted to it quite a number of times. Yeah, that basically what I'm saying is, yeah, that sex is a scam. I want you to understand that sex is the ultimate scam. It's the oldest scam in the book, and what's so difficult about it is that who are you being scammed by? Your own DNA. You are your own worst enemy. Yeah? And you are being scammed by your own DNA, which is basically driving, in gentlemen's case, driving your penises, and in women's cases, driving your vaginas, right? And it's trying to trick you. Everything it does, all sorts of little tricks. And the women, for example, I mean, they're being manipulated to buy loads of makeup and all that sort of stuff, and clothes, and it's all to do with DNA and reproduction without them even knowing it. Even if they're not even out there, even if they're completely infertile, it doesn't matter. What's driving even this behaviour of mine right now is being driven by, this kind of sort of animalistic need to say, hey, I'm here, please, let's reproduce. Yeah, I mean, I'm not really wanting to reproduce, especially not with you, sir, right? But, don't take it personally. It's very difficult to reproduce with you. But so everything is driven by your own DNA, which is basically a piece of aberrant code. It's a parasite. It's like a parasite living within you that is basically tricking you 24/7 and trying to get you to reproduce. With this little scammy feeling, which is basically just a drug fix. That's all it is. It's just a fix of drugs, a little fix of drugs that lasts 10 seconds and can cost somebody else's life and somebody else's death. Yeah, that's what I want you to just consider for a moment and think about sex differently. At least consider that as a narrative to try and save your unborn children from coming into existence.
But I'm still not sure why.
Why?
What's wrong with existence?
What's wrong with existence? Well, you see, it depends who you ask, and it depends whose existence, you see. So, for example, there are a lot of problems with the existence of the millions of people that are slaves, all around the world, that have to work in horrible conditions to make all the crap that you use and you eat and you consume. Yeah, for example. Yeah, there are lots of people whose existence is absolutely miserable. Yeah, there are a lot of people, you know. So and so therefore, bringing someone else into existence, yeah, is going to lead to all sorts of problems, and it's gambling in the most reckless way, right? I see it like this, right? I see it like this. Okay, I'm just going to go off the subject slightly just to be a bit more provocative, if you can get a bit more provocative. And that is that there are many people in the world that are very small, unfortunately, in my opinion, I'm unfortunate because I personally cannot stand compliance, right? Oh, hi, you're back.
You're a psychiatrist.
Yes, I understand. I'm a psychiatrist, but I can't stand compliance. Like blind obedience, yeah? So what I found as a psychiatrist, interesting in the last 18 months, I found that people have been happily involved themselves in a medical experiment, yeah? Which is called the vaccine, the COVID vaccine, which is an ongoing medical experiment. And then now they are experimenting on children, yeah, in schools as we speak, on teenagers, and they'll be going younger and younger and younger. Eventually, they will be experimenting on children. I regard the vaccine as an experiment. I've been a psychiatrist for 25 years, and I know that every vaccine that they've ever brought out has been at least 10 years in the making, right? So this one is clearly a global experiment. It's a medical experiment. However, it is nothing. It is dwarfed by sex, right? Which is the ultimate medical experiment. It's terribly dangerous. It's terribly reckless. It's basically, if you take the myth of romance and love out of it, and you look at sex from a cold chemical perspective, what your parents did, sir, was basically they engaged in a crazy medical experiment when they mixed together their liquids, hoping for the best. Yeah? And I think that is what we need to speak about. We need to speak the truth about what our parents did, and we need to stop experimenting on children by having them.
I mean, personally, I'm grateful for that. I'm happy to be here.
I'm happy you're here.
Oh, that's nice. So we've got some guy here who's happy to be here, and you're happy he's here,
And I'm happy that his parents chose to procreate.
and you're happy that his parents had sex. You're happy.
That's their choice.
That's their choice? Is it? Well, it is their choice to want it. You know, you could argue it's their choice, although you could argue maybe it shouldn't be their choice, right? Because, you know, because they took a risk with your life, and they had no way of knowing whether you would enjoy it or not, number one. Whether you would be happy to be here, number one. Number two, I do think it's a little bit, I have a problem with the kind of binary nature of that kind of response, because many people, certainly including myself, go through ups and downs. We have thoughts sometimes that we're not happy that we're here, and then other times we might be happy that we're here, right? And, you know, when you're older, you might feel differently, because, you know, when things start falling apart, and all your friends start dying, you might feel differently, you may not, yes? But that's not the point. You know, the point that I'm glad for your parents' sake and for your sake that you're happy to be here, yeah? But your parents still involved themselves in a crazy, reckless medical experiment that could have gone a lot worse than it did, right? Yeah.
I have something to say.
Yes, go for it.
So you said that sex makes women buy makeup to make themselves feel
the DNA.
The DNA. But what about the societies in which women don't use makeup and makeup does not exist?
Yes.
So it's more about the social hierarchy and the social costumes, not about the DNA. It's
Okay, so I'm just going to repeat what you're saying so that everyone can hear, right? So let me see if we can understand remember what you said. You said that I said that DNA leads women to get makeup on so that they then attract men and they have sex and then they reproduce. Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Right?
Yeah. But you're saying, but there are some cultures where they don't use makeup.
Yeah.
Yes, they use what? Cultural costumes, did you say?
No, like there are like communities.
Yes, even in this culture some people don't. Yes, I understand that, but I wasn't talking about them. I was talking about the people that do. And the people that don't use makeup, their DNA will get them one way or another. They might use intellect, for example. Their DNA might get them to use their intellect in order. I see what you mean there. Yes, I agree.
What's wrong with that? It's fun.
What's that?
It's fun to flirt with people.
It's fun to flirt with people.
Yeah.
Well, yes, it may be fun to flirt with people. It's also fun to take heroin. But it has consequences. And I think the consequences of having unprotected sex are far, far, far worse than the consequences of taking heroin. Because they involve somebody else. And you have no right to take risks with somebody else's life, do you?
But I can flirt without having unprotected sex.
You can flirt without having unprotected sex. Yes,
Yeah.
I agree with you, you can. I agree with you. I didn't say that you can't. Yeah? But unfortunately, flirting can lead to unprotected sex. So you need to be very careful with that. Yes? Number one. Number two, your point before was that some women don't use makeup. And therefore what?
No, because you said, so I'm saying...
So their DNA doesn't get them to use makeup. It gets them to do something else. All sorts of other things. It gets them to, you know, it gets them to have a really nice, good degree, which really attracts the people that, it really attracts the men that like women that have got good degrees. See what I mean? Why don't I give her the megaphone? Would you, yes? Well, the reason is twofold. Number one, because you have to be very, very close to the microphone, and I don't really, from a hygienic point of view, I just don't think it's a great idea. Number two, she can bring her own megaphone next time if she wants to. Do you know what I mean? I did go to the trouble of charging the batteries and buying this.
So basically, you're full of shit.
Basically, he says, but basically, I'm full of the S word. I have to say that because, you know, some people might get really touchy that I say the S word. He says, basically, I'm full of the S word. And some guy said something else, but he's gone. But anyway. Yes. What's the resolution? What's the ideal world look like to me? Well, you see, the thing is that I'm really not interested in fantasizing about some ideal world, right? What I'm interested in is you. I'm interested that you understand, or that you start to question your own relationship to sex, and you wake up to the idea that actually having sex is basically the same as taking any other drug, and that if you have sex regularly, you're just a junkie, yeah? And not only that, you are worse than a junkie. You are 10 times worse than a junkie, because if you have unprotected sex, yeah, the consequences of that are going to be 100 times worse than some junkies having a bit of heroin.
So do you think that junkies don't share needles?
Do I think that junkies don't share needles? Well, no, not junkie. I'm talking about sex junkies. Sex junkies. No, sex junkies don't share needles, no, because they don't take their drugs by needle, you understand? I mean, there's lots of different ways of taking drugs. There's the pills, you can have patches, or you can have it by the injection of semen and rubbing parts together, yes? Rubbing body parts together is a way of releasing drugs.
So you're saying that heroin addicts...
What's wrong with drugs? Again, we've been over this already. I am not saying there's anything wrong with drugs, right? But there are better drugs and there are worse drugs. And drugs have there are many drugs that have unwanted effects. Alcohol is one of the worst drugs because of the unwanted effects of alcohol, which are violence, which often, I mean, alcohol often leads to oxytocin, right? Because often when people take alcohol, they end up sleeping with someone they wouldn't normally sleep with, which is how so many of you got here in the first place.
Mate, you didn't answer my question. My question was...
Yes?
My question was, do you think that junkies don't share needles?
Do I think that junkies don't share needles? I did answer your question. I said it depends what type of junkies. If you're talking about people who are sex junkies, then as far as I know, they don't share needles.
We're talking about heroin addicts.
Heroin addicts?
Yeah,
No, that's a different thing. The junkie is a general term for someone who takes a lot of drugs. And I include people who regularly have sex as junkies.
Right.
See what I'm saying? So you're looking at a certain type of junkie, which is a heroin junkie.
So you're taking a word here and...
I'm taking a word, that's right.
Putting it into your language.
I'm putting my interpretation on my word. Sorry. The other question. Just...
When we're talking about junkies,
yes.
who thinks
Just 1 second.
heroin addicts, that kind of thing, not
Wait, can you just answer a question because she's been waiting?
Yes, okay, go on.
Okay, so I'm quite late to this, but is your issue with sex only when it produces offspring? Is that the...
Is my issue with sex what?
When it produces offspring? That's the danger.
Yes, that's the unwanted effect. I mean, the thing is that it's the thing is that it's often the wanted effect, yeah, by the people doing it. Yeah, they want to reproduce, but they don't get the consent of the person. So
Obviously, no one can consent to do
that's right, no one can consent, and therefore we shouldn't do it because we have a principle, yeah, that we don't interfere. We don't do anything that interferes with another's life, and we certainly don't cause death of another without their consent. Yeah, without their consent.
So do you think that we should just stop reproducing?
Well, you see, the thing is, what I think I don't like the word should. I purged the word should out of my language when I was about 30 years old, which is quite a long time ago, right? Because should is basically the language of non-acceptance, yeah? Because to say things should be a certain way, saying, I don't accept that's how they are, they should be like I think they should be. No, I don't think that. I think things are as they are, yes? And I can't make them different, yeah? And I accept that we are that we are all programmed, yeah? Not to realise that actually sex, we are programmed by society and by our own body in a way, by our DNA. Not to realise that sex is basically just releasing drugs. The purpose of releasing those drugs is to take your mind off what you're really doing, which is engaging in a dangerous, reckless medical chemical experiment, which is what your parents did when they created you. Even though you seem lovely now, and maybe the experiment went well, maybe it didn't, right? But the point is, that's what your parents did when they experimented with you, and you are an ongoing medical and sexual experiment. Yes?
As a genuine question, by doing this, like what change practically are you trying to do? Like, what is your goal by doing this?
What's my goal?
Yeah, like by doing this specifically, what are you trying to achieve? Like genuinely.
Yes, no, it's a fair question. You see, the problem is with you're assuming with your question that I'm trying to achieve anything. I'm not trying to achieve anything at all. I'm just trying to pass time. That's all. This is how I pass time.
So basically,
I mean, the thing is that you know,
basically
what I'm doing here, if I have to try and explain it,
so
right,
basically
my interpretation of what's going on here is that I'm creating some kind of interactive theatrical experience, yeah, with an underlying kind of I don't know, undercurrent, which is trying to encourage people to think differently about things, and in particular about sex and reproduction. That's it. But I mean, you know, I don't delude myself that I think you'd have to be really even more crazy than me if you were to leave this discussion and like never have sex again and not have children and take heroin.
Do you avoid having sex yourself?
What's that?
Do you not have sex?
Do I not have sex myself? Unprotected sex? It's a very personal question, isn't it?
Well, I mean, I'm just wondering.
We've only just met.
So like all
at the end of the day,
how do you apply this mentality?
Yes, how do I apply it to my own life? Well, let me tell you this.
Hello!
What's that? Hello?
I'm trying to talk to you.
You've tried to talk to me?
Without the microphone.
Without the megaphone? Really? No, sorry, that's not how it works.
Why not?
Because that's just not how these performances go. If you want to talk to me, I will repeat what you say, and then I will respond to what you're saying. But I was still...
You should listen to the people.
What's that? It's quite attention-seeking. Yes, that's true. I agree with you on that, it is. And your point is?
Would you say you're addicted to
It's not the most astute, observation, is it? I mean, it's kind of, yes, it is attention-seeking. Yes, that's correct.
Sex is primitive.
Sex is primitive, correct.
Would you stop animals from having sex and reproducing?
Would I stop animals from having sex?
Sex is
That's a very, very good point.
200 millions of years.
Sex has been around for 200 million years. And, yes, I don't know, roughly. Heroin, but how long has heroin been around for? I don't know. Yes.
Best of luck, mate.
This is the weirdest Durex ad you've ever seen. Alright, well thanks for that.
Do you take heroin?
Do I take heroin? No, I don't take drugs.
Do you have sex?
I don't take drugs, I pay for them.
Did you have sex lately?
When was the last time I had sex?
Wrong answer, you should have taken some heroin.
What do you do when you've got no protest on, right? How you doing, man?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good.
You're
Can I have a go on
fucking
the megaphone, is that?
He is, yeah.
I've got one question.
which is that it is bad
Right.
child.
Listen.
Listen,
Yeah, enjoy.
Yeah, I am. I'm loving it.
Entertainment, street theatre.
Yes, I'm suggesting that it's very questionable as far as I can tell. I'll put it this way: I don't know what anybody should or shouldn't do. Yeah, but to me, I've not yet heard anybody explain to me why they think it's.
You should face reality.
I should face
That's
reality.
Face reality, yeah.
All right,
No, you should
well,
get a
thank you for
blowjob. Get a blowjob, get a good blowjob, and then you'll say that it's a.
Yeah, so far I've not found anybody to be able to explain to me how they can logically and ethically justify bringing someone into existence.
Can you explain why you are?
What's that?
Can you explain why you are?
Why I am what?
Why you are?
Oh, why I exist. Why I exist. Do you want me to explain why I exist? Yes, the reason why I exist is because my parents, they were junkies. My parents were junkies. And they kept having sex, right? They didn't realise, my parents, they didn't realise they were junkies. My dad was a solicitor, my mother was a teacher, right? And they were really upstanding members of the community, yeah? And they would never break any rules, yeah? And they didn't realise that actually they were junkies just like the heroin junkies down the road, yeah? And that's why they had me. Because they like the feeling, which is,
What's the solution? Do we stop having sex, or do we just only take heroin, or what do we do?
Well, I mean, you have to find out your own solutions, but you see, the thing is that you can do whatever you want. I mean, there's many options. For example, you could have a vasectomy. Have you had a vasectomy? Yes, you could do that. Absolutely. Do it on your own. It's a lot cheaper, it's a lot quicker, and it's a lot cleaner.
A lot more efficient.
I tell you what, you can do better than that. You can do better than that, right? A lot better than that. Although it requires some self-control, and that is you can go on one of our courses. We offer courses that actually got a special discount. We've got a special discount for you guys. If you book by the end of the week, only £499 for a 12-week course on semen retention.
Semen retention, are you keeping it?
Yes.
You want mine?
No, I don't want yours. No, you get to keep it. You get to keep it all.
Yours, I'll take yours.
No, you can't have mine. I get to keep mine, you get to keep yours. That's right.
Should I feel ashamed?
You can learn to hold back. You can learn to hold back and not to be such a loser and let go of control of your weapon of mass destruction. Because at the end of the day, the male climax is for losers.
You're just a fucker. Get the fuck out.
Okay.
Get the fuck out.
No.
I just want to know how many brothers and sisters you've got.
No. Let me talk about something.
How many brothers and sisters have I got? What's that got to do with anything?
Don't
Four. I'm one of 5.